Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Skokie Planning Commission meeting for March 5th. Before I start, I just want to let you know that we are an advisory board to the Board of Trustees. The decisions we make tonight is either approval or denial, which is a recommendation to the board. And the board will have a final vote at their meeting, and they meet on the first Monday and third Monday of every month. So our recommendation goes to them, and they will decide at their meeting, through their voting process and how the cases will go. There should be a yellow sheet somewhere or soon. If you want to sign up, give us your name and address, and we will notify you when these cases go before the board. And you can also get a copy to report too. So first order of business is approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. We have 4 cases tonight that are related. Case 2020-03P, zoning map amendment at 7770 Frontage Road. 2020-04P, subdivision also at 77 Frontage Road. And 2020-05P, a parking determination for the Erie Crown Hebrew Day School. And 2020-06P, a site plan approval for 7787 Grosse Point Road. Is the petitioner here? Are you ready? And can we have your name and address for the record, sir?
Mark Gershon with Polsinelli. I'm at 150 North Riverside Avenue in Chicago.
Okay, you're an attorney, right?
An attorney.
Okay, just to click for the record. Is there notice in order, Counselor?
Mr. Chairman, notice is proper and correct.
Okay, so would you summarize for us? I know we have 4 cases here. If you can just kind of roll it all into like a snowball and give us an overall.
Chairman, do you want me to swear in everyone who's going to speak
Oh, sure.
first?
If you have anybody who could come up and give
Anyone
testimony.
who is presenting?
Yes,
from
please stand up.
Please stand up. Don't worry, I won't have them all speak, but they're the ones who are here just in case.
Okay, just in case. They might offer something later on. Gentlemen, please raise your right hand. Ladies and gentlemen. I thought I saw a lady back there. Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you all? Thank you very much.
So you've received from us a full application package, written responses to all the standards and descriptions of our project. Today we're going to present a very short, I promise you, video and a PowerPoint. And I'd like to ask right now that all of those documents, as well as our testimony, may be made part of the permanent record for the hearing. Thank you. I know, given the interest of time, some of the things that you guys are used to hearing me say to introduce it, I'm going to skip through that in order to give you a chance to really get to the real meat of what we're doing. But obviously, we are all here if you have questions, et cetera. The video you're going to see, none of you will be surprised to know that if you're going to do a major project like this, you have to raise funds for it. This is a fundraising video. We will not be asking for donations while we're here. But even so, I think it gives a really dangerous for a lawyer to say, but a picture is worth 1,000 words. Since I live by the word, that's a little bit of a problem. But we're going to walk through this thing. It gives you a really great sense of what the school is, and then I'll come back and start our presentation, and you'll hear from a couple of us here. Some of our consultants will not be speaking. If you have questions on engineering, as an example, I can certainly have those people come up here and speak if it's necessary. And now we'll see if we can actually get this to start. Look at that. They thought we couldn't get the transition doing. Okay, great. So I think you get a good sense of what's there, the long history of this school and the community. And Rabbi Eli Samber will talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to skip through sort of some of the basic stuff because you've got it in your staff report in terms of what recommendations, what we're requesting, et cetera. Couple of critical things. There's been a lot of work getting us to where we are today. Not just the 10-year history of finding the right site for this project, of finding the right development for it, but also working with Matt, with Carrie, with Mike, with your entire staff, and getting us to where we are today, which we're very pleased with, which includes confirmation from your traffic engineers that we've satisfied the requirements for parking, signage being before the Appearance Review Commission. We truly appreciate all the recommendations of approvals in the staff report, unanimous recommendation of approval from Appearance Review Commission, and parking, which you've talked about. So first thing is we're looking at the site we're talking about. For those who are not familiar with it, is essentially right here. To give you a sense of the area, here's the high school and obviously the highway and the intersection, but gives you a good sense of it. But in terms of looking at the zoning, while this is a rezoning request from M1 to R2, as you can see, everything in yellow, either in Skokie or Morton Grove, is residentially zoned. So it's a pretty consistent vision of what's there, and obviously I don't have to say to this group how consistent it is to have a school right next to a very large, significantly larger high school. But we wanted to give you a sense of where that is. Same thing, just given time, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in your comprehensive plan, but we really appreciate that your comprehensive plan recognizes how important it is to have good schools in a community, recognizes the kind of benefits they can bring, and recognizes that bringing those into the area really builds up the entire community. Sorry. All right, at this point, I'd like to ask Rabbi Eli Samber, principal of the school, to come up. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Plan Commission.
Will you have your name, please, for the record?
My name is Eli Samber. I'm the principal at Erie Crown Hebrew Day School,
Thank you.
and it's truly an honor to be here this evening. I still watch that video, and I've seen it a gazillion times, and it gives me goosebumps. So to be up here is really an honor. A little bit about me before I just so you know who I am. My roots with Erie Crown travel quite deep. In 1972, my parents moved myself and my brothers from New York to Chicago. My father's chief counsel for Department of Energy in New York, and they closed the office there and basically asked him to move anywhere in the country where they had an office, which were like 15 of them. After doing a lot of exhaustive research, he chose Chicago because of Erie Crown Hebrew Day School and the reputation that it had already at that time. And so at 5 years old, I came to Erie Crown moved to this city because of Erie Crown. And for the better part of my life, I've been a part of Erie Crown Hebrew Day School. So as I stand here before you tonight, I'm not just the principal of Erie Crown. I'm a product of Erie Crown, and truly through and through my bones is Erie Crown Hebrew Day School. Erie Crown started in the 1940s after the scars of World War II were still very much open, and a few very motivated visionaries set out to create a school that would provide the best in secular general education as well as Judaic education. And what started as Hebrew parochial school, and then when it moved up in the 1950s to the north side, became a Chicago Central Hebrew Day School. And then in the 60s, when they were able to get their own property, they were able to get a building on Kimball and Foster, they took on the name Erie Crown Hebrew Day School. And the school attracted people from not only the community, but from around the country. People who were looking for a quality education for their children moved to the city because of Erie Crown. And the school grew and continued to grow. And in the late 70s, made the move. I was in 6th grade at the time. I still remember the excitement of that move. Made the move to Cleveland and Tripp. And the dedication of that day of that building is still very vivid in my mind. And Erie Crown became a part of Skokie in the 1977. 10 years later, we're able to secure the building on Main Street. And 1987 made that move. An addition was added to that, which was the Kenton building. And in 1995, made an addition to that building, which we still fondly refer to as the new wing, some 20-some years later. And our enrollment grew and grew and grew and grew, to the point where today we are close to 800 students, of which over 100 come from Skokie. And in my position as recruiting, one of my jobs is to recruit families to the school. How refreshing it is for me to have families come to me saying they've moved to Skokie because of Erie Crown, because of the reputation of the school. And as I traveled the world, literally the world, I've had people who have said to me, Erie Crown? That's in Skokie, right? As it has become synonymous as truly one of the great schools known throughout the world, and synonymous with the village of Skokie. And so our history is not only rich, but our roots in Skokie stretch very, very deep. The education of Erie Crown, our mission statement, is to provide for children truly the best of education, excellence in education, both secular studies and Judaic studies, but go beyond just the text, the books, the writing, arithmetic, but to produce good, honest people. To take these boys and these girls and be able to set them out to go to higher institutions of learning, and over 2,500 graduates of our school have gone on to all different schools and all different colleges and all different seminaries, and now populate not only our own community, Skokie and the Chicagoland, but throughout the world as leaders in their communities and in their fields, but of which we're most proud of, good people who give back to the world in which they live as a result of the education that they've received. So, whether it is in Judaic studies or secular studies or the arts, math, art, athletics, dance, song, music, Judaic studies, our students are prepared to move on to higher institutions of learning of their choice, and it's exactly what they do. The excitement as we look forward to where we are today, because our growth, which is a great blessing, also brings with it challenge and opportunity. And so as we searched and searched for years, and which is well documented how long we've been looking for an opportunity, we have been able to locate this building, which provides us with an unbelievable opportunity, an exciting opportunity, one in which I lie at night thinking about all the ways that we're going to be able to take this building and do what we're able to do and do it that much better. We're talking about a quantum leap in what we can provide for our children, whether it's in the classroom sizes, which allow our teachers who have learned so much and are on the cutting edge of what is going out there in education today, be able to bring it into a classroom that actually facilitates their ability to do that with the students. Whether it's sports and athletics and fields for these children to be able to run around, whether it's labs or libraries, which today we could only dream of because we don't have the space in our building to be able to provide that for our students. The opportunities that this building provides for us go far beyond cosmetic beauty, but enhance the education which we work so hard to be able to instill within our children. So I stand here this evening humbled and excited to be able to be a part of bringing this future of Erie Crown to fruition. I would like to end on one note, and that is my joy of being here and playing a role as I am able to, as the principal of the school, in setting the stage for what is the future of Erie Crown, has a very personal satisfaction for me. I'll share something that I don't think I've shared with anybody else in my life, to be honest. Nobody in this room knows this. shortly after I was hired as principal 16 years ago, I had the chance to visit one of the founders of Erie Crown, Willie Rosenblum. Willie Rosenblum was part of a small group of families that started Erie Crown. He was quite ill. Weeks after I met with him, he passed away. And already then, it was well known that Erie Crown was looking for a new location. And he called me over to his bed and whispered to me at that point, please try to keep Erie Crown in Skokie. That's my wish for you. Please keep Erie Crown in Skokie. So to be able to play a part in fulfilling one of the founders of our school wishes to me on that day is something that is of profound, it's very profound to me, and so I thank you.
Thank you. One quick item before I call up our architect. I'd be remiss if I did not say, as I mentioned, this, you can imagine a project like this, you start fundraising very early on. So for those of you who are looking carefully at your drawings, you may say, you know what, that's not exactly our current rendering, and that's absolutely right. This project has continued to evolve and to get better as we went through to the point when we applied. So please consider this to be a video about the school, its history, and its vision, and our drawings are what we have submitted to you for approval. Let me ask Mark to come up.
Good evening. I'm Mark Amstetter. I'm the principal of Amstetter Architects. I'm quite happy to have an association with Erie Crown and be able to present a little bit about the school that we are going to build in the Sirius building. The first, where am I? Site context. We all know where the school is. I mean, we drive by it every day. I live in the city of Chicago, and I still drive by it at least 5 times a week. So that big white building, as we drive by through Skokie, well known. It is a great location adjacent to another major school in your community that shares the context within the community. I think this is such a great opportunity. In the 10 years that I've been associated with Erie Crown working on their potential new schools, we looked at lots of different sites. This site really had the potential to be a terrific building. This is a building that's, the existing building is 160,000 square feet. Why am I not next? It's a 12-acre site. Currently, it was originally built as a phone center for Allstate. Had lots and lots of parking. Lots of people have moved in this building. Way more asphalt than we'll ever need. We'll go back through the parking, but one of the big things that we're going to be doing with this site is opening it up and returning lots of the property back to green space. This site plan, as we now see it, you'll see a much smaller field of parking, some large play fields that'll have both baseball and soccer, and there'll be lots of playgrounds in and around the building, and some additional development of the landscape. Part of what we are doing is we're building an addition that'll be for a gymnasium primarily. The school itself will fit mostly in the existing building, and the only thing that we have to do new construction for will be a gymnasium and stage and those multi-large spaces that they need for their special activities, mostly their athletics. It's a gymnasium. I mean, it's basketball courts and a wood floor and all the things that you expect to see in a school gym. We are going to be improving on the existing landscape, while this is a well-landscaped site. But to meet the current codes and requirements of the community, we'll be adding additional trees and plantings along the Frontages Road and along Grosse Pointe Road, as well as filling in and replacing some of the trees that have suffered over the years in some of the landscape inside the center of the site. The building is a 3-story building. There's a big basement area and then 2 floors of stuff. Basement's going to be used for, that's what it is. It's going to be mechanical space, it's going to be storage spaces. We're not doing any school activity down in the basement. First floor, you can see this both on first and second floor. The classrooms are to the outside. The communal spaces, activities, special activity rooms are to the interior. The area that's off to the right in green, that's the gymnasium addition. It's a rather large addition, but these are large open spaces with the daylight that's natural in this building. It's a big office building. Office buildings are all about having window line for people to have private offices. We now are converting those into classrooms, and there'll be early childhood and first grade on the first floor. And the second floor, the same concept. It's a racetrack building where the classrooms are to the outside, where the specialty classrooms, art, music, science labs, computer rooms, all those are to the interior where windows are not as important, and we'll be building out that area for those purposes. That is the plan for the school. Architecturally, we're going to use what's there and try to enhance with it. We're not trying to remake a major building with a major facade. This wasn't like other buildings where you're remodeling and you want to upgrade the facade. We have a well-established precast building. It's a monumental building. So we're going to use that as an asset and then enhance on it so that the new addition reflects the existing concrete building. And this was a view of the front entrance area. That's a lot of that's existing. It's still precast. It'll be opened up for some window area for new offices and stuff that are in there. This is the gymnasium. It have its own entrance and connection. Gymnasium is really just basically a big box, but we try to articulate it with some natural light and some windows in it. So it will be a space that can be used both for basketball and wrestling and volleyball and whatever, but also be used for assemblies and other kinds of student activities. Part of what we're asking for is relief on signage. In the R district, you have a very limited signage ordinance. In this building, we're going to brand the building on the outside of the gym. That's not in your face. It's 400 feet from the roadway to where you see it. We presented this to the Appearance Commission. They were happy with it. We have some identity directly over the entrance of the building and a small logo identity out to the highway, which if you know that building, that's a very small area and a very long building. And this was presented to the Appearance Commission, and they unanimously accepted it. Along the front of the building, out at out of the front entrance, there'll be a small monument sign that'll be similar to what you would see, consistent with an industrial park or school area. Again, these areas, the graphics and the presentation was presented to your Appearance Commission, and they accepted it unanimously. I'm going to turn it over to traffic.
Good evening, Chairman Luke, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Dan Brinkman. I'm with Gaywell Hamilton Associates. Our office is 625 Forest Edge Drive, Vernon Hills, Illinois. Again, both the traffic impact and a parking study have been prepared for the development. A little background about Gaywell Hamilton, been in business for almost 40 years. We've had the good fortune to do over 60 projects in the village of Skokie, many of them over the last 20 years. I am the Assistant Director of Transportation Services. I have about 25 years of experience. I've probably worked on 24 education campuses, public, private, everything from high school and secondary education to private elementary schools. What I'm not, unfortunately, is Bill Grieve, who's been working on this project since 2008. Mr. Grieve couldn't be here tonight. I've spent a lot of time with him over the last couple days familiarizing myself with the study. If you have any questions, I would do my best to answer all of them. So like I said, we did start with a traffic impact study. We considered, obviously, made sure that Niles West was in session when all the counts were done. We looked over 4 different peak periods. Because the operations vary crowned with prayer in the morning. When the school arrives, they actually prayer starts a little bit before Niles West, and classes start after Niles West. And we get out in the afternoon about a half an hour after Niles West does. So our analysis really considered 4 different peak hours: school peak and the street peak, both in the morning and in the afternoon. There are a couple of safeguards built into this. We considered the complete build-out of, or their maximum capacity of 920 students. Erie Crown's not your typical school, as Rabbi Samber started with his presentation, so it's not like you look in a book and say how much traffic is Erie Crown going to generate. There was a lot of observations, a lot of work, a lot of effort went into making sure that our projections and estimates of the operations traffic flow in and out are as accurate as they can be. On top of that, we considered 5 years of background growth not related to the school up and down all the local roadways to make sure that we fully understand the impacts, not of the school at opening day, but at build-out. Again, over 25 years into doing this, looking at all the information, all the observations that were done, an amazing percentage of the students participate in the carpool program that they have in terms of getting people in and out of Erie Crown, over 60%. And that's truly impressive. And again, considered in all of our analysis and our calculations. Traffic operations, you're not going to be seeing a significant change. Mark touched on the site plan. There's an excellent access system, access to Grosse Point Road, access to the frontage road, 2 access points on frontage, 1 on Grosse Point. Level of service, something you all heard, it's kind of like a report card, or the pun, kind of appropriate for a school project. Level of service C, this is how we grade the operations at the Access Drive. C is what we consider design. So at build-out, plus 5 years of non-Erie Crown background growth and traffic on the area roadways, all the access drives are still expected to operate at this quote-unquote design level of service, meaning there's plenty of additional capacity for growth without causing problems. I'll touch on that last point in a minute. And again, it's not just a number study. We take a look at all the operations of the driveways, the campus, how pickup and drop-off works, different signage and appropriate traffic control devices, not only on the campus, but we've worked with staff, and there's some recommendations to consider doing some more regional improvements, some different signage at the intersection of Frontage and Howard, and potentially widening out Frontage Road and Grosse Point Road for separate right and left turn lanes. And again, those aren't really specific to the needs of the school. It's more a regional thing that would help all the traffic in the area. Okay, parking. Parking's always interesting. Whenever you do a parking study, regardless of whether it's a school or commercial development, you have 3 numbers that you're thinking about. You have the supply, what you actually have marked on the ground. There's code, which is kind of unique in Skokie. The decision on code and what required parking is left up to you folks. And then there's demand. How much parking do we really need? So when we talk about demand, we talk about, particularly for our educational facilities, what kind of events do we have? So you have to go back a little bit of background. The largest event in the history of school, they had 500 people attend a memorial service for, I understand, a former principal. The next largest event they typically have at Erie Crown would be graduation, which generally has around 300 attendees. We did a lot of looking. We considered, again, very much like the traffic study, they considered 4 different peaks. We looked at 4 different peak parking events, or 4 different kinds of parking events for the school. Your typical school day when it's just class, an after-school basketball game of some event of some kind, a special event being a weekday evening assembly, and that's really when we expect the potential for the peak attendance, and then a weekend banquet. And again, with the proximity of office and industrial and Niles West on a weekend, traffic is considerably less in the area. So what we boiled this down to was, again, there's not a lot of published information about private elementary schools or day schools and that, so you look at a lot of different options. Institute of Traffic Engineers, that's kind of our gold standard for traffic engineers. They have a ton of published information about what kind of parking demands you can expect for all different kinds of uses. Engineers, we still refer to some of the Planning Association documents. There's a lot of research done in terms of all over the country, what works here, what works there, what kind of codes and requirements or ratios are needed. And on top of that, we looked at 16 different Chicagoland ordinances in terms of, for assembly space, what kind of parking standards or codes are required. The site ends up, we can provide, back up. So 289 spaces is what's on site. Now again, that would accommodate roughly 850 seats based on what the Institute of Transportation Engineers tells us. Those same 289 spaces, based on the average information from the American Planning Association, up to 1,156 seats. And our community research tells us that the average for 289 parking spaces, you can accommodate parking for 867 seats. On campus, again, the number that we've settled on for the 289 spaces there is an event that will accommodate 865 people. So that's the largest event they ever had, 500, plus the second largest event they've ever had, 300. And another 65 of us, probably this entire room, we can all show up. And as long as we come 3 to a car, there's plenty of parking on site. Anything more than that, maybe we have to look at valet parking or other kind of off-site parking. We've done the analysis. We've worked with staff. Everybody agrees that this is a pretty reasonable, ratio of, again, roughly 3 seats for every parking space. Did you want to touch on the last?
No.
Okay. So again, Mark may have some more information, but if there is a need for an event, that requires, or will accommodate more than 865 people. There are options within the site plan to do valet parking. I believe we have to come back and talk to the village to make sure that's approved by both village staff as well as emergency services. Anytime you valet park, you want to make sure you can still have circulation, so that would kind of be a specialized site plan.
I have two questions.
Sure.
One, the capacity of the newly built gymnasium if it were seated in audience style, theater style.
I have that number. I want to say it's
It's
about
approximately
a little more, about 1,000.
approximately 1,000, but we've agreed, part of that stood up was that we've agreed in working with the staff to put a limitation of 865 people on it. And a clarification on this, I know is one of your conditions, actually, I think it's the second to last of the last condition in your site plan report, is that if we wanted to go to valet or to off-site parking, that we would come back through the process to get the determination from the Plan Commission. And Mr. Chair, I'd ask for just clarification. I believe that decision is a final decision by the Plan
Yes,
Commission.
it is.
Right.
And the only other question, that's fine, 65. The only other question is the 289 spaces that we keep identifying, those are currently on site, or those are after the construction of the athletic fields and the grassy areas around the, remaining after the grass?
Right, that will be the supply when the site is completed and re-greened.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. You're good.
I think I'm good.
Thank you. Just going to do one or two quick things to wrap up and keep us moving forward. As you said, we've, I think, hopefully gone through and answered your question on the project. Obviously, we're summarizing more than a year's worth of work on this. If there are any questions, we're happy to address them. I'm not going to go into details unless you want me to. Having me walk through how we subdivide two lots into one is very exciting, and I can go through that in detail if you'd like, but I'm going to presume you probably don't want me to go there. But I do want to hit on one thing that's important. There are a lot of benefits to this. You've already heard, and I'm not going to even attempt to be more clear at the Rabbi Samber, the incredible benefits to the students, the faculty, to the entire community of having this newer, better facility, of bringing their two sites to this one property here. But there's also something we haven't talked about, which is having this school here, having all those students and their parents, et cetera, see Skokie as both those who live here and those who come here, see it as their home where their kids go to school, means that this is also where, when they drop their kids off, they then go to do shopping, to take care of your services, et cetera, et cetera. Hard to put a number on it, but there's clearly a significant economic benefit to the community of doing that and having those people there. At this point, I'm going to end our presentation. There are two mice up here. And happy to address any questions you have. As I said, we have other consultants here, and you have all of our other documentation should you wish to review that. Thank you very
good.
much.
Thank you very much. By the way, please, Mark, would you state, are there any questions of the commission?
That is the existing site. First of all, how long do you expect it will take to build out the new site and to transition into it?
Year and a half, right? Rough approximation, a year and a half of construction.
And then once transitioned and the other site is empty, do you have plans for the former Main Street site?
We're actually already working with the village on this, and I believe both sites will be marketed for other users.
And what is the other site? I know you keep talking about two sites, and I know the Main Street site. What is the other site?
And this one, I think I'm right, but someone correct me if I'm wrong, the former Judea Mitzvah congregation property on, is that Grosse Pointe or Nile Center?
Nile Center.
Nile Center, on Nile Center Road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
why I'm not the traffic engineer. I know there are two angled streets and, yeah.
Thank you. At this time, I'll have the staff come up and present its report. After the staff presents its reports to the commission, I will open up the floor to anyone in the audience who has a question or comment on these cases.
I'm going to present cases 2020-03P zoning map amendment and 2020-04P subdivision. and I'd like to request that both reports be accepted in the record as written.
Your request is granted.
The first case is the zoning map amendment, and we are supportive of the request. The request doesn't meet the intent of the comprehensive plan. When we devised the plan in 2005, we didn't anticipate this area being transferred over to a educational type of use. However, as the petitioner pointed out, we do have residential both on the east and on the west sides of the subject site, and one of those residentially zoned properties is being used for educational purposes. This was one of the later parts of town to be annexed to the village. In my research, I discovered that it was, I think in the 1956, the majority of the site was incorporated into the village, and at that time it was zoned for residential purposes. And then it was later rezoned for industrial when Allstate came in 1959 and constructed its building there. There have been subsequent tenants at the property since that time. So that's all I have for the zoning case. And for the subdivision is required because the property is currently on multiple parcels that are located within different subdivisions, and the only way we can join those together and meet our code requirements is by doing a formal one-lot re-subdivision of the property. And this subdivision will contain dedications of right-of-way, both along Grosse Point Road and along Frontage Road, because there's a sidewalk that exists on both sides, and in some areas the sidewalk kind of meanders onto property. And so in order to eliminate the liability of having a public sidewalk on private property, we requested that that be placed entirely within the public right-of-way because it is functioning for a public benefit. And other than that, that's all.
Okay. Any questions of staff on the zoning and subdivision cases? None? Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right. And I am here to present cases 2020-05P, which is the parking determination case, and 2020-06P, site plan approval. And I would ask that both of these reports be accepted into the record as written.
Yeah, request is granted.
And with 06P, I will have one clarification on the condition number 34, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so the parking determination. An assembly use requires a parking determination by the Plan Commission. This decision was made about not quite a year ago. I believe the petitioner and the design team gave a good overview, so I'll try and just hit the highlights. So the weekday evening assembly of the 4 tests conducted by Gewalt Hamilton, the highest calculated parking demand is for the weekday evening assembly use. And let's see, the report that's in the packet estimated about 850 people in the assembly since November 2019 when that was written. Staff and village staff and design team staff have since settled on one parking space per 3 seats, which comes out to 865 seats. Yeah, so the use with the greatest need in the village sets the minimum parking requirement. And although consideration was given to providing valet parking services on site due to the minimum emergency access needs not being met, this option cannot be accommodated as proposed. Therefore, should RE Crown desire to pursue valet parking services in the future, formal applications shall be submitted for parking determination through the Plan Commission, and then a modified review of the site plan through the Village Board. So the staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission determine the off-street parking requirement for RE Crown Hebrew Day School at 7787 Grosse Point Road be 289 vehicle parking spaces, and that the assembly use at the school not exceed 865 seats. It is further recommended that should additional parking accommodations be necessary in the future, a formal application shall be submitted for a new parking determination through the Plan Commission and a modified review of the site plan approval by the village board.
Carrie, of the 288 spaces that the village requires, how many of those are handicap?
A minimum would be 7, but 8 are on the site plan, shown on the site plan. So that part is met.
Any questions?
Parking.
Yes?
Looking at the reality of the situation, is there any reason for us to restrict them to their private property, even though that is the time when they will use it most? But if they were to overflow into the obviously open Niles West parking lot, which is public and there, and different times of peak use than this, that is the reality that we should think is possible. Is that correct?
It would be an option to consider, but as far as what was presented or proposed was trying to keep the parking on site. So as presented, and the on-site option constricted drive aisles and driveways, so we wanted to find an option that would work for now, and then, but we're open to considering other options in the future.
I'm happy with 289. I'm happy with the number of seats, 865. But I also recognize that the overflow would be easy. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions on the parking?
Okay.
Thank you, Carrie.
All right, site plan approval case 06P. This is site plan approval, which is necessary for a site that's over 1 acre in area. And this is also an R2 single-family, potentially R2 single-family zoning district. The site would include the gymnasium addition, surface parking, playfields, and stormwater detention. A bunch of sign code relief is being requested. I'll summarize that later. And then another item of relief, which I'll present later. There are quite a few easements. I'll just pull. Actually, this probably isn't going to look that different. All right, yeah. So we have water mains traversing the north part of the site, south part of the site, and then also there's a private main north-south here. We also have overhead utilities along the Grosse Pointe right-of-way, and then sewer and a whole bunch of above-ground and underground utilities to consider. And so some of the easements that are currently in place don't meet our current language standards, so we will, as part of this request, have the easements updated as part of the
Just change the
approval
language?
process. Yeah, I don't know the specific technical language, but our water and sewer superintendent and legal department they have specific language for that, so.
All those utilities are in use, though.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay. And as mentioned before, there are sidewalks, and there's actually a bike route on Grosse Pointe Road, and Pace Bus, the nearest available one is on Howard Street to the south of this site. The easements, the Water and Sewer Division has stated that they cannot be in a secured area. There was a gate option that maybe we'll clarify in a few moments. So they need to make sure they can have access to that, to any of these easements should that be necessary. And the Forestry Division, the village has a bond requirement, and for all the trees, there will be a bond that will need to be posted, and the majority of that will be refunded once all the landscaping is planted at the end of the project. Traffic engineering, reiterating no valet parking at this point, but the parking can accommodate 865 seats. No parking will be allowed in any drive aisles. And so the south access drive, looking to clarify whether it's one-way in. If so, do not enter signs would need to be provided. In this area. And if it's two-way, we need to make sure that the driveway is at least 24.
It is one way.
It is one way? Okay, so we'll need some do not enter signs at the southeast corner of the parking lot. Yeah, all right, cool, got one done. Okay. The Planning Division is supportive of the petitioner's request to renovate an existing office building to an elementary and middle and junior high school and child daycare center not in a residence use. And so, the security gates, could you clarify the use of them?
There'll be a security gate in the main.
Could you answer,
Here, if you... Oh. Pull out the site plan. Okay, there we go.
For obvious reasons, there's concern about security on this big of this site. There will be a gate off of the entrance from Grosse Pointe, which will be closed during non-high traffic hours. They can be controlled by emergency vehicles with a transponder that can be provided. But basically, after the morning drop-off period, there isn't anybody coming to the site who doesn't need to check in and announce themselves. There will also be gates to restrict movement at the frontage road entrances during those same off hours, and those will be manually controlled. So we're not looking to have people just be able to drive through the site, except under the control periods. These also can be controlled so that people can have access for the utilities and that kind of thing. There's no real restriction other than trying to keeping cars at 10 o'clock in the morning who have no business coming through the site without having to go through the secured point off the Grosse Pointe, which would communicate with the security to the building. The other places would be closed off and then reopened when they need to use access to those points, primarily for the big pickup and drop-off periods for the students. Otherwise, they're closed down. Any questions?
Yes. Question about access. So right now, there's only two driveways, the one to the south to Frontage Road and the one to the north to Grosse Pointe, is that
No,
correct?
there are three. There's two on frontage, one on the south, one on the north. The one on the north is a two-way, widened and improved road. That one, people will be able to go in and out of. The one on the south will be it will be restricted to in only. So what, if you can think of as a clockwise rotation around the building.
That's what I was going to ask you
Yeah,
next.
yeah.
So if you could describe the drop-off traffic pattern for the
People will come
60% carpool
Yeah,
drivers.
they come in, circle around, drop off at this large drop-off.
Mm-hmm.
Go back up. Okay, thank you. All right. Where's the button? People can come down, there'll be a security point, they'll carry them further down, turn, drop off their kids, come out and exit out,
Okay.
or exit out. So there's two-way direction at both these locations.
And then,
Down below, they can enter in the morning and then only come in. And that would be primarily drop off for early childhood, and they can proceed out again.
where is the drop-off for early childhood?
Early drop off for childhood is at this location.
It's a different drop-off point.
Yeah, and the main entrance for most of the other students is at this location, and then there's an entrance that's at the gym location.
But the carpooling will mostly be from
Carpool will
the,
mostly come through here, drop off. If you're coming to drop off a child for early childhood, you would probably come in here.
and likewise, you can come in from that northeast entrance?
Yeah, you could come into here and come around. This is only to make sure that the traffic counts were being accommodated. They weren't fully accommodated if it was just one way in and out on all entrances.
And will there be fencing around the entire perimeter of the site, or only security gates at the street
There'll
access
be some
points?
fencing along this perimeter. There's already fencing here now.
Okay.
We're not making an armed camp out of it,
Mm-hmm.
so there's just going to be traffic gates.
And then there are three, you mentioned two traffic gates, but you meant to say three?
Well, these are manual,
Yes?
and they'll be open and closed, and they'll only be open during the drop-off and pickup periods. This one will allow for in and out and communication with the security for the building.
So the other two are manual, so there are three entrance exits, and there are therefore three security
Security
gates,
gates.
two of which are manually operated.
One of which is communication and will work by proximity and opening and closing by security people.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? I'd be happy to answer. I'm not really the traffic guy, but I'll leave it to that.
thank
And
you.
the bus traffic comes in through the south.
Yeah,
correct?
bus traffic will queue here along this drive and then come up as they're called. So unlike the other school where everybody is staging off on the public streets, the staging here will be not on Frontage Road or on Grosse Pointe, but it'll be on the property. Big issue, and we wanted to resolve that.
Okay, and then just a technicality of the depth of the parking spaces along there will be 16 feet deep and a 2-foot bumper overhang to meet village standards. And then also, who would like to provide the rationale for providing 40 bicycle parking spaces instead of 80? I'll let
Unlike a school that's solely a neighborhood school where everyone is coming in from there, the reality is that most of the kids who are coming here are coming from a larger area, and the good news is we've got decades of experience of knowing how many kids are coming in on bicycles. So just didn't need to put more bicycles in than there's actually a use for.
And then will buses be stored on site? The buses will not be stored on site.
Lots of heads shaking no, so the answer must be no.
All right, and then the signage, again, as mentioned earlier, since this is anticipated on being a residentially zoned property, signage is much smaller, almost non-existent for residential. But since this is a school and a large building, relief is being requested for the primary wall signs to allow them to exceed 24 square feet in area and 10 feet above grade. A secondary wall sign on the west, kind of southwest elevation, again, by virtue of being a second wall sign, and then also exceeding 24 square feet and in area and 10 feet above grade. And then the ground sign, to allow the ground sign to exceed 35 square feet in area. Let's see what else. Appearance Commission reviewed this case at 2 different meetings. The September meeting looked at it more from a development design standpoint, and then the October meeting looked at the signage that is presented to you this evening. The staff recommends that the petitioner's request for site plan approval to renovate an existing office building into an elementary and middle and junior high school and child daycare not in a residence uses at 7787 Grosse Pointe Road be in an R2 single-family zoning district be approved based upon the proposed findings of fact and subject to recommended site plan approval conditions below. And staff further recommends relief from the sign code to allow larger wall signs higher above grade than what code would allow, and then also a secondary wall sign on the southwest elevation, and then also a larger ground sign, and then also from section 118-222 to allow 40 bicycle parking spaces in lieu of providing 80 as required by code. Some of the conditions prior to the hearing of this case before the Board of Trustees. The petitioner shall submit to the Planning Division, just ensure that the same site plan is used for all drawings, including updating the site plan to coordinate with the site geometry plan. And then prior to issuance of building permits, update the existing easements, the tree survey, final grading plan, preservation plan, and landscape plan with plant list a final version of that be provided. Lighting photometrics and other engineering plans. And condition number 5, the proposed development shall have a maximum assembly capacity of 865 seats. Condition 6 is that valet parking is not approved as part of this request. And the moment you've all been waiting for, condition 34. Any change? So basically, I would like 834 struck from the record and add this new language. Any change in user may require an application for new parking determination with site plan approval, including public hearings, and will require a new certificate of occupancy. Are there any questions?
That was because, expand on that a little more.
Okay.
That's because you don't want Erie Crown to be able to sell to another user school, because that's all that would want it, without an entirely new process.
Yeah, any new user that would come in, there would likely be a different change in operation or how it's used, and so we want to make sure that on record that even if it might be another school use or that sort of thing, that we look at how that entity will use the site, and there may be some nuances that may impact either the site plan or parking or that sort of thing. So we just want to make sure that even though it might be very similar, that we consider the specifics of that new entity.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions of staff? Okay, very good. Thank you,
Okay,
Carrie.
thank you.
All right, at this time, I will open up the floor to anyone in the audience who has a comment or a question on these cases. Please come up and ask away. No one? Okay. I'm sorry, come on up, sir.
There's another gentleman.
And, oh, there you are, I'm sorry. Didn't see you. I'd ask that you just give us your name and your address, please.
My name is Michael Williams, and I live at 6538 Northwest Highway in Chicago. I asked that my comments be made part of the record today.
Yes, there will be.
Thank you. Skokie Zoning Board members, I'm a business associate of Mr. William B. Sadowski, who currently is out of town. He's the owner of a commercial building at 5550 West Howard that has 3.5 acres adjoining the vacant office building at 77 Frontage Road. Currently, the zoning for this property is a Class 1 M1 office assembly industry. This meeting is relative to a zoning change request from the owner of Cyrus Computer Solutions to amend the zoning map and zoning district from a Class M1 to an R2 single-family residential for a potential Erie Crown Hebrew School. Mr. Sadowski is a small business owner of BCLS Landscaping, brick paving, snow removal, and external construction company. Mr. Sadowski purchased the property in October 2018 for $2 million. His property tax bill is $65,000 a year. He further expended $305,000 in land cleaned up and completed landscape improvements to the property. This property was purchased to house his various excavating equipment of semi-trucks, end loaders, various snow equipment, landscaping trucks, trailers, and numerous skids of pavers, stockpiles of landscaping soil, and mulch. Mr. Sadowski is a small business owner, and other local businesses will experience irresponsible fiscal harm of decreased property value with the zoning change to the adjoining property. Furthermore, with a nonprofit school not paying property taxes, the current annual property taxes for the Cyrus office building of $310,000 will put an additional burden of other property-paying taxpayers. The village of Skokie will then be impacted by $20,000, and the Skokie School District will be negatively impacted by $221,000 a year. In conclusion, with Sure Purchasing in May 2018, the former Alter Group headquarters parcel nearby at 5500 West Howard, this shows that office buildings need to remain, and they were initially planned and built. The Skokie Village of Economic Development and Community Development Departments should work with Cyrus to find another office tenant that can play off of Sure Audio conferencing technology and keep the fiscal tax-based benefits to the village of Skokie and the local schools and not burden other property owners and citizens of Skokie. I hope the zoning board supports this direction and does not approve of the zoning change. Mr. Sadowski purchased the property in 2018. The only way he got notice of the zoning change is he saw a sign on a tree in front of the property. He thought someone lost a dog. Well, it turns out this is the zoning hearing that's today. He received no formal certified letter of any of this information that's been going on for some time with the village, and I think that was wrong. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Counsel, could you answer that? Notice?
With respect to the notice, certified letters are not required anymore. There is and I could show you, there is notice that has every property listed, and maybe we can go out, or I could show that to you, that if you give us your address, there would have been a letter that went to that address.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Anyone else, please?
Good evening. My name is Paul Applebaum. I'm here on behalf of Sure Incorporated, 5800 West Toohey Avenue in Niles. Also, we are the owners of the property at 5500 West Howard, as you just heard, the adjoining property. We also just received notice of this hearing tonight, so we've had limited access to review and documentation, but I'd like to speak here tonight on behalf of Sure to voice our concerns and opposition to the plan as currently proposed. First, I'd like to say we are familiar with Erie Crown and the good work that Erie Crown does. On a personal note, I also was born and raised in Skokie, and I am well aware of the school and what it does. So we appreciate that. Our objection is not to the school in principle. Rezoning the site from N1 to R2, first of all, does not meet the village standards. I think that is evident. It's not consistent with the comprehensive plan or the development trends, according to the report. Also, contrary to the standards, R2 is not more suitable than N1. I think that's also in the staff findings. In addition, putting R2 in the middle of the M1, M2 area creates some specific problems. It would limit future possible expansion of all the adjacent sites. It would increase yard requirements for M2 zoned areas, reducing developable areas. There'd be, at least as the plan is currently set up, there's no separation of the school children from the commercial sites with all the trucks, traffic, noise, and emissions that comes with those commercial sites. It also raises the possibility of future objections from R2 owners to otherwise allowable uses on the M1 sites, especially in the event of an expansion by our company or another company that's in the area. It possibly also lowers property values, and I would have to question whether Sure would have purchased this property in 2018 if this rezoning had been in effect at that time. The proposed site plan also raises some specific issues for us. For example, as I said, there'd be a lack of barrier to school children coming onto the M1 property, ours in particular. And in fact, it appears that the site, their proposed site plan actually contemplates children being outside and having recreational activities or other activities outside where they could easily come over to other properties. It also raises possible traffic concerns. And I know we heard earlier about a traffic study, but we found no reference to a traffic study in any of the public documents we were able to access, nor in any of the findings based on those. So we have some concerns about traffic. Along the frontage road in particular, there's times when there is heavy truck traffic through there. We don't know exactly what the plan is for buses and cars. I've heard a little bit tonight, but it still isn't clear to us. And as I said, we don't have access to any studies that might have done. So we have concerns about congestion, we have concerns about safety, we have the concerns about the safety with buses, children walking around, children biking through there. And, you know, that might be even heightened during pickup or drop-off hours or during times of special events, which we heard about. So for those reasons, we have concerns and objections to the proposed plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Is there anyone else? Please come up.
Good evening. My name is Zipporah Gelman. I moved to Skokie 13 years ago. I am also a business owner here in Skokie. I own a fitness facility for women, and I am a very proud parent of 5 children, 2 who have graduated from Erie Crown and 3 who are still in the school. My youngest is in pre-K, and my oldest, that's currently in Erie Crown, is in 6th grade. Excuse me. Over the years that I've lived here as a Skokie resident, I've seen the school grow tremendously, and I am so excited about this new facility. It will adequately house the entire student body under one building with the appropriate space to create a healthy and nurturing environment for our children. The students deserve academic and extracurricular resources which will enable them to thrive intellectually, academically, spiritually, and socially. Additionally, my husband is the rabbi of the Church Street Synagogue, KCT, at the corner of Church and Crawford, and we have seen firsthand over the last 13 years so many families who have moved to Skokie with the intention of sending their children to Erie Crown. The ties between the school and the community certainly run very deep. I also strongly believe, as a female business owner, that the new building will enhance local businesses and the overall landscape of the Skokie community. I envision mothers dropping off their children in the morning, coming to my studio to exercise, frequenting all the different stores and shops in Skokie, and then returning back to pick up their children at the end of the day. It's really a very exciting time for Skokie, and the Erie Crown new building is a huge part of our bright future in our community. Thank you so much for the opportunity to say something. Good night.
Okay. Good evening, sir.
Hi, good evening. My name is David Polster. I'm a longtime Skokie resident. I live at 9135 Keystone in Devonshire. We moved here over 20 years ago when our kids were young, in large part because of Erie Crown Hebrew Day School. All of our kids have gone there. Our youngest is graduating, so the one unfortunate thing about this wonderful project is that it won't be finished before our kids graduate from the school. But we're nevertheless strongly in favor of the project. Many of our friends and neighbors have moved to Skokie as a result of Erie Crown Hebrew Day School and send their kids there. My wife volunteers on a regular basis at the school and is constantly going back and forth to the school in between dropping off and picking up and going to other Skokie businesses in between. So we and many of the people that we talk to and our neighbors are strongly in favor of the project and hope that you'll approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. Mr. Gershon?
If I could, I just want to respond to a couple of the questions that were raised by a couple of people here. First, while we don't have any evidence presented as to adverse economic impact on the property, on the surrounding properties, what we do have is a long history of this exact. I don't even have to bring in sites from other places in Skokie or any other place in the city. We've got a high school right next door. It borders on manufacturing on essentially, let's call it 2.5 sides. It has been there for quite a long time. Those manufacturing facilities have been there. We have a long growth of those properties being economically viable and important to the area. And both the property owners who bought in this area bought with a high school right there. And I think that that's because it is a good benefit between the two of them. Question on fencing, very, very, very worthwhile question. want to make sure I get this right, and they'll correct me real quick, but there's an existing fence from here to here on the property, and there's a new fence being put in from here to here, correct? Great. So there is fencing to separate out the two. Like the high school, we will have students who are outside playing near the other facilities, but we also will have the fence there to address those.
How tall is that fence?
6 foot, I double check what's allowed under the code, but it's 5 or 6 feet. Whatever the code will allow it to be.
We'll put in the maximum that your code allows in the
Okay.
application. And one of the other questions just on notice, which I actually think your attorney already responded to, but all legal notice required by both the state and by the village was provided in accordance with those requirements.
I have a question of the architect, if you come up to the podium, please.
Yes.
Will there be any lighting in the evening hours there?
There's parking lot lighting, which will operate under normal parking lot procedures. School is open past 6 o'clock in the evening. If there are special events, obviously the lighting would be then on for those events for the parking area. It is all parking lot lighting that would meet your standards with cutoff, and they would be turned off at night when the site is, completely shut down. It won't be illuminated like a bus terminal or parking lot for security purposes all the time. It will be only when they're.
I noticed there's a baseball diamond there. Will that field be lit for games?
No, there's no night games for the athletics here. This is not, the athletic
Wrigleyville. It's not
activity is
Wrigleyville.
strictly for the kids,
Okay.
little kids.
Okay, all right, thank
And
you.
Paul, one other thing I wanted to clarify, part of it is a question that's on your notices. There are two addresses associated with this property. The current address is the 7770 Frontage Road. The address, as you saw from our signage, that will be the nameplate address for this property is 7787 Grosse Point Road. And as was mentioned, that's because these entrances are obviously very important and critical for during the school day when people are coming in, but this is our primary entrance to the school, and we want that to be the nameplate. We want people who are coming here to be coming to that entrance so that we have control of it.
One more question. Mark, I don't know if this is a question for you or for the staff, but you talked about the other sites that you are now vacating or will be vacating in 1 or 2 years, and that was one of the strong points made by one of the people who gave testimony a few minutes ago. Could you talk about whether your intent or the intent of Erie Crown is to sell those sites to developers for taxable purpose or to sell them for non-tax purpose?
I'm going to ask Brian Levinson to come up and respond to that.
And sir, you're coming up for the first time, could you give us your name and your address?
My name is
please?
Brian Levinson, 3133 West Sherwin in Chicago.
Thank you.
In terms of what we're going to be doing with the two other properties, we've had extensive conversations with the village and village staff. It's our intent to market them to the best use, most likely for a developer on a tax basis. Certainly the Main Street property, that is what our goal is. The Judea Mitzvah building has been a synagogue for dozens and dozens and dozens of years, many decades. That may or may not, just because of the use, it doesn't have a lot of from a developer perspective, attractiveness possibly, but we plan on publicly marketing them with the intent that most likely, at least one of them will go back on the tax rolls, and most likely that would be Main Street.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And one other item that was raised by one of the gentlemen who spoke, just to clarify, and my guess would be that the high school did the same because it's in the same area, but I can't say that I know that. But we did emissions tests on this property, both emissions coming off the highway and emissions from the surrounding buildings. They all came back satisfactory, without concerns. As you can imagine, we have the greatest concern that our students are in an area that's safe for them and the right location, and that's why we did the extra step of taking those tests.
Okay, thank you.
My having worked with the construction of Northside College Prep adjacent to a CTA bus barn, the issue is that prevailing winds are almost always west to east, and therefore the expressway fumes will go to Skokie, as they always do, to the east, and they will not flow over the school building.
I just have a personal comment on the question of declining real estate values there. I personally believe that the values actually go up as properties become scarce in that area. That is a very, a hot area for commercial property. And with this piece of land gone, I think it'll make the other parcels more desirable. So that's just my personal opinion. No one else? Okay, ready for vote. On case 2020-03P, the zoning map amendment, do I have a motion? Commissioner Lexpati, motion to approve as presented. Do I have a second? Jeff Berman. Okay. Call for the vote. Commissioner Mitchell? Aye. Commissioner Quain is absent. Commissioner Scott Berman?
Before I vote, just let me say, this is one of the best presented proposals that we have had in my 10 years on the Plan Commission, and I want to compliment the staff and the petitioner for this wonderful proposal. I vote aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Villegas?
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin?
Aye.
Commissioner Lexpati?
Aye.
Commissioner Jeff Berman? Aye. Commissioner Matei?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Next, we have case 2020-04P, subdivision at 7770 Frontage Road. Commissioner Jeff Berman.
Motion that the proposal be accepted as presented.
Okay, and a second. Commissioner Mitchell, thank you. Call for the vote. Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Villegas.
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin.
Aye.
Commissioner Lexpati.
Aye.
Commissioner Jeff Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Matei.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. In case 2020-06P, this is I'm sorry, yes, here we go. Got shuffled here. Excuse me. In case 2020-05P, the parking determination, of which we are the final hearing body on this, so we have the final vote.
I move approval as presented.
Commissioner Mitchell and Commissioner Scott Berman seconds. Call for the vote. Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Villegas.
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin.
Aye.
Commissioner Lexpati. Aye. Commissioner Jeff Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Matei.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. And finally, on the special use, not special use, again, I got
With
shuffled.
the amended and important number 34.
Site plan approval case, 2020-06P, with the amended text for condition 34.
I move as presented with that amendment.
Commissioner Franklin. Thank you. Call for the vote. Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Villegas.
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin.
Aye.
Commissioner Lexpati.
Aye.
Commissioner Jeff Berman. Commissioner Matei.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Okay, again, we are just an advisory board to the Board of Trustees. These cases still have to go before the Board of Trustees for final hearing and approval. Thank you for attending, and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much. We truly appreciate all of your time and consideration.
Take a little break here.
Well done, sir. Well done. Nice to meet you.
Let's give him the card.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so honored and so happy to be here.
Do you need your thumb drive back?
You'll be thumb right back, and you should now have everything. Oh, I'm looking around for my other pen because
There
this
you
one
go.
died. It's right there.
Okay. So I can get you out of here without destroying the thumb drive.
My associate just yelled at me too for not doing that. I didn't think I had to do that with flash
I have
drives.
one that like yells at me every time I put one in because it was removed at one point. It's just like, you want it fixed? I'm like, no, it's okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Appreciate it.
Job.
For all your work on this.
I didn't do anything. It was all Carrie
Gary
and Mike.
did, yeah.
So, yeah.
There's that, I just want to give you a heads up. The one guy who said he never got notice, it's in his 77. Is it Dan? The guy, the tax roll. We gave it to the bank.
It's an old tax roll.
This is what was on the Cook High, you went to the Cook High.
But they should have changed that though, if that's something, just. That's not our.
I'm sorry?
That's their fault, but is it just FYI?
Yes, I'm gonna, as soon as they,
Yeah, sure, you ever see notice?
Clear
They
up there.
said they had notice.
okay.
You're saying, so this gentleman, this here is the old owner.
That's the previous owner.
But is that his address? Let's do it.
Hey, Mike, could you,
Mike, give me a call. You got a second now?
Yeah.
Call me. Call me. Call me.
So now you see what we're up
all right.
You have your PowerPoint here.
All right, can I have your attention, please? Our next case is 2020-07P, a special use permit application at 8150 McCormick Boulevard, unit number 228. Is the petitioner here?
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Can I have your name and address?
Yes. Good evening, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Avi Damarsky. This is on behalf of ownership of the property, care of Weiss Properties. The address is 8170 McCormick Boulevard, Suite 100, Skokie, Illinois.
Okay, let me swear you in, sir. You raise your hand. Do you affirm that the testimony given tonight is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you?
I do.
Okay, Counselor, is there notice and order?
Notice is proper and correct.
Okay, could you give us an overall view of your petition?
Yeah, if I may just go back a little bit as far as the history of our company, what we've done with the subject site and kind of our relationship with Skokie in general. We specialize, our MO is really helping municipalities, communities, villages bring up property value, bring jobs to the neighborhood, and just bring up the general well-being of the surrounding area. What we particularly specialize in is in finding buildings that are either vacant, underperforming, and just generally not enhancing the community. We will then go in and essentially breathe a new life into those properties. So I don't know how well this would show up actually on the PowerPoint, but I will show you a couple before and after photos briefly. But as a short history, the subject property on McCormick was built, I want to say 1920s or 30s. I know it was early 20th century. It was essentially an industrial building manufacturing. It was owned by U.S. Robotics in the later half of the 20th century. They built modems there. And then subsequently, the property has been vacant for a bunch of years, and it was on the market, and people kind of couldn't figure out what to do with it. We had bought the property in 2005, 2006, so late 2005, and we had essentially done a full-blown remodel of the entire property and essentially brought it up from what was a vacant building to a almost fully occupied and stable office building, bringing dozens and dozens of businesses to the area, hundreds of jobs to the area, improving property appearance and being a real kind of attraction for that whole corridor, which was sorely lacking quality office space. Part of what we especially specialize in is being very keenly attuned to the local needs. One example of that is we have just recently opened our first co-working space in the village of Skokie due to the increased demand for more flexible office space with shorter lease terms, et cetera, et cetera. So we are constantly evolving, trying to improve our building, which on a big level increases property value and brings in high-quality businesses and jobs to the area. The purpose for the petition tonight is a special use permit There's a school, Good to Great Individuals LLC, that would like to operate on site. Currently, the property is zoned M3 industrial, which does not allow for any sort of technical trade or specialty school, and we're therefore applying for the special use permit to allow for such a school on site. If I may briefly just show a couple before and after pictures to kind of try to help illustrate what we've done to the property, and it is our intention to do the same sort of general upgrade to that part of the building where the school intends to go into. That part has been vacant for close to 5 years now, I want to say. It is in the second story of the building, kind of towards the back, which is historically a very difficult part of the building to lease out, so it's just been vacant and kind of dead space. And we see this as a phenomenal opportunity, almost selfishly, to lease out that part of the building, but certainly in a big picture to bring in a phenomenal organization which will improve the village of Skokie, surrounding areas, and just provide a great service. So here's a brief, let's see how that shows. So when we bought the building, the photo on your left-hand side was the main entrance. The exact same angle is what it currently looks like, and that is the entrance as it stands today to the building on McCormick. This is an example of a building we have on the corner of Howard Street and St. Louis, also in Skokie. Very similar story. We had bought it as a vacant charcoal grill manufacturer. It was a single-tenant building, entirely vacant. We saw this as an opportunity to bring a sort of manufacturing business incubator to Skokie. We had bought the building. There was really no main entrance. It was a single-user building. What we had done, as you see the before and afters, create an appealing environment in which small kind of industrial businesses can thrive. We had multi-tenanted out the building, so we went from one vacant 180,000 square foot building. We now offer sizes as small as 1,000 square feet and up to 20,000 square feet. We have a variety of jobs in the area. One of the huge success stories was actually we had a company started by 2 young grad students. The company was called Pressbox. They essentially did, and I apologize if I digress from the initial point, but I would like to paint the overall picture. They had started what was essentially lockers in the lobby of Class A buildings for dry cleaning. So downtown, you have these high-rise buildings. Students or young professionals would drop off their dry cleaning. They would pick it up, launder it, and our facility on site here bring it back to the lockers. Last year, they were bought out by Procter & Gamble, which was a huge success story for them. And due to the great location of Skokie within the greater Chicago area and the extremely efficient build-out that we had facilitated in this plant, Procter & Gamble elected to keep the operation there for the foreseeable future, keeping many good jobs in the area, and they have since rebranded that as Tide. So that's just one of the many success stories. Similar success story at the McCormick building. Dr. Walder has started a company called IDT, Integrated DNA Technologies. When he came to us, when we first bought the building, he was one of our first tenants. He had, I don't recall the exact number, but it was under 6,000 square feet. It was just a couple of offices, him and a couple of associates. And this is, I don't fully understand that world in synthetic DNA manufacturing or something along those lines. I do know when I went into his office, he had shelves full of binders that were labeled patents 2004, patents 2005, patents 2006. I mean, the guy was brilliant. Last year, he had sold his company to Danaher Corporation for $1.9 billion, and that's billion with a B. Needless to say, he has grown his company to be a massive, massive company providing many, many, many jobs globally. But obviously, this was their corporate headquarters, and it brought many quality jobs to the area, and that was directly as a result of us converting that building into a high-quality office asset. And I'll go through this a little more quickly. This is the interior hallway of the Howard Industrial Building. So as you can see, and the picture is kind of hard to see, but you had these dark, dim, kind of depressing industrial hallways. We have put in skylights, a fresh coat of paint, new walls, and really gave it the TLC that it needed. This over here is going to be the lower level of the McCormick building. One of the things that will probably be discussed later on with regards to the parking is the amenities in the building. This is an example of one of the amenities. What was on the top photo just the basement of a manufacturing building, dead, unusable space. We had turned into this large meeting space which tenants in the building can use for various occasions. This is not something open to the public, but this is something where we invested significant dollars into this as an amenity to the tenants, which provides a really good environment where their business can thrive. And lastly, with regards to the external appearance, what we have done in this case was in the lower photo, there really was no main entrance to the building. It was kind of an industrial building. Employees would filter in wherever kind of the closest entrance was. We got rid of a lot of the glass block window. What's actually not shown in the lower photo was all along the side of the building there were no windows. It was all brick. We had installed the nice storefront windows all along, and as you can see from the before and after, done a significant improvement to the kind of outward appearance of the building, which is crucial for us to attract tenants, but also crucial for the curb appeal and general aesthetic environment of that whole McCormick Boulevard corridor. So this kind of gives you a little bit of a picture of what we're all about. You know, we thrive and focus on helping the small business owner succeed. Whereas some of the other bigger real estate guys go after the 100,000 square foot, you know, behemoths or huge tenants, we like to do the opposite approach where we will take a larger building and actually cut it up specifically to allow for the smaller tenant to grow. My office is located in that building, and every tenant has my cell phone number, and we're on first name basis, and that's kind of how we've always operated. Similarly, we have a very close relationship with the Village of Skokie. I specifically want to mention the owner of our company, Jake Weiss, couldn't be here tonight, so I'm on kind of here on his behalf. I'm the director of operations. I have been with the company for the past 2.5 years. Jake Weiss obviously has been with the company a lot longer, so his relationship with the Village of Skokie goes longer than mine. But starting from this project, I'm McCormick, and really for all of our projects in the village, we have worked closely with the village and have had nothing but just great experience. Skokie has had a reputation of being very business friendly, which we have found to be very beneficial for us and also for attracting businesses to the area. A lot of what we've been seeing, particularly in the past, call it 2 years, is the attraction of businesses to Skokie from Evanston, for example, where there's been a dramatic increase in the office rents in Evanston due to lack of space and just increased demand. As a result, we are essentially the first quality office building in Skokie if you're coming from Evanston, right across the river. And that has fed a lot of demand. We've had 2 companies move in from Evanston in the last 6 months alone. Additionally, with our amenities and the kind of the full package that we offer, we can easily compete with all the other office buildings in the area, but significantly more importantly is our goal. And we are just extremely hyper vigilant about this, is making sure we are a good landlord to the business and a good landlord to the Village of Skokie. And reputation is important, and really making sure that whatever we do, and I think it's almost self-evident, the economic value that we bring to the area is a benefit obviously to us, but significantly it's a benefit to the Village of Skokie, to the surrounding property owners, and just to the general area as a whole. So kind of getting back to the point now, we are applying for the special use permit for the school. If you have any questions, I'm open to answer them.
Any questions?
No, I'll have questions if you.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we hear more about the school?
Yeah.
Yes. So that was that was the next step. Is I'd like to
I
have
was going to ask her to
Kamiko.
step up.
Yeah. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you.
And can we have your name, please?
Yes, my name is Kamiko Smith. I am a community integrated living arrangement.
Okay, I need to swear you in.
Excuse me?
I need to swear you in.
Oh,
Raise your right
swear.
hand.
Oh, sorry. I'm new to this. Okay.
You affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. My name is Kamiko Smith. I am a community integrated living arrangement owner, in which I own 3 community integrated living arrangements, in which, for those of you who do not know what a community integrated living arrangement is, it is a CILA. It's a community integrated living arrangement in which we provide housing for those individuals who have special needs, for those individuals who has DD, they're delayed, they have mental retardation, cerebral palsy, certain things like that, things that may have happened at childhood, shaken baby syndrome, alcoholic fetal syndrome, things of that nature, in which their parents were not able to take care of them and they were taken away from them at such a young age. However, the Department of Human Services did find them places to live, and we know how the Department of Department of DCFS work. We know how that works. But anyway, up until age 18, they have no place to go, and most of the time they're going from houses to houses. But once they become 18, we find them a house. We find them a house that we provide good services for them. We feed them, we clothe them, we give them food, their ADLs. We take good care of them. Now, the only thing, the reason why that we're here today is because after we've decided that we're going to take on this responsibility of being the caretakers for these individuals, it's hard to find these guys a place to stay because of the behaviors. Sometimes they have behaviors that a lot of people don't want to deal with. A lot of people don't understand the behaviors. We don't work with a lot of behavior analysts. I'm sure it may be 1 or 2 of you in here who are behavior analysts, but it's very difficult to find behavior analysts who are willing to work with these individuals. So that is our responsibility to try to find them a place to stay outside of the cellar. And this is a day-to-day operation. You have to go from place to place. You have to beg, you have to borrow, you have to do everything in order to find these guys places. And it's no fault of their own, but it's because of the way that they were raised and the things that happened to them, the traumatic things that were so traumatic that happened to them when they were younger, and they don't know how to cope and they don't know how to deal with these particular situations. So right now, we do have a waiting list for people who do want to join our program. We do, and we can't take everybody. But we would like to take some of those people who could possibly be placed somewhere. So that's our desire right now. And Ivy, as I spoke with Ivy earlier today, we were talking about the location. This location will hold up to 40 to 60 individuals, and that's 40 to 60 individuals who will have a place to stay not a place to stay, let me make sure I say that correctly, but they'll have a place to stay, but outside of the home, they'll have a place to go to. This place will help them with arts and crafts. It will help them in the community. It'll help them with different things, such as teaching them how to ride the bus. It'll help them with finding a job. It'll teach them how to communicate with others. These are things that you and I take for granted, but these guys, they don't know. They don't know. They don't know what they're doing is wrong. They seem to displace their anger. They just don't know. and it is our responsibility as human beings, good human beings, to try to teach these other human beings how to live, in a normal life, as normal as they can.
Question, which is what I was
Go right
waiting for.
ahead.
This, but it sounds, we welcome community living facilities in Skokie, and we have many of them.
Mhm.
Do you operate any of those on in our residential neighborhoods currently?
I do not. I own one. I own two on the south side. I own one in Rogers Park right now. I live in Skokie.
Okay, so so then the school that you're intending is to help those people that are living not only in the homes that you own, wherever they are, Rogers Park or the South
Yeah.
Side, but also those homes that we currently have in Skokie and Morton Grove and Niles.
Absolutely. Anywhere that we can find a place for a person who needs a place to go and learn job training skills or, yeah.
What do they do now that they are living in our community and have been for 20 years or so?
Well, right now, a lot of them do nothing. A lot of them stay at home. In fact, I can tell you, of my 20 clients, I have about 4 of them that no one will take. And we're trying everything possible so that so someone could take these individuals. It's a very difficult job. It may sound like it's not, but it's difficult to find someone to take on a person who has behaviors.
So do you run a school like this elsewhere? Do you run a school like this elsewhere, or the only thing that you bring to this petition is your experience as the owner and operator of 3 of these community living homes?
My experience is 12 years worth of experience, and I actually I try every day. My director, I have my director here too. We try every day to try to get these guys placed in a place where they can feel comfortable, where they can feel accepted, so that they can feel accepted, so that they can be around other people who are just like them, people who can understand them.
My questions, both for this at this point and continuing, will be the same questions I would ask if somebody were bringing us a daycare center for children. It is, what experience do you have in operating a center like this? How large is it going to be? How are the students going to come to you? Are they going to be driven? Are they going to come in buses? Who pays for this service? Those are
If you could ask me those questions, maybe 2 at a time, I can answer
Okay,
them.
we'll start with, is there another facility like this that we can relate to that already exists anywhere in our area?
I am going to tell you that there is one, and the one, to be truthful with you, it is one, but it is not designed for just the average, I'm sorry I say this, but the average African-American person, it is not. It is not designed for that. But I think that we need to incorporate, we need to get everybody together so that we all can live together as one and not just segregate this section over here and this section over here. We all need to work together.
Okay, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for the
Department of Human Services will pay for that.
They want these group daytime facilities.
They want it.
Okay.
They want
And how are the students, the current residents of the homes who are going to be the students for your facility, how are they going to come to the facility? Are they going to come by bus?
They come through referrals. You mean as
No, physically.
physically.
Geographically, are they going to?
Oh, geographic. Okay, then they will come through a bus. I don't know how many of you are very familiar with PACE because most of us drive. But PACE is a transportation company that is provided by the Department of Human Services. PACE will give you 5 to 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes 5 to 10 minutes. If you come outside within 5 to 10 minutes, they will take you where you need to go. However, they cannot wait 5 to 10 minutes. They can't wait more than that because they have doctor's appointments that they have to pick up people for. They have loved ones' houses they have to pick up people for.
So they will make
Okay?
pickups at the local homes where the people currently live and bring them to your facility, and likewise return them to the homes where they live.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'll probably think of some more questions in a few minutes.
I'm sure you will.
Anyone else?
I just have a question, so what type of licenses do the staff have?
I am licensed through the Department of DHS, the Illinois Department of Human Services.
So that license to run this facility?
Yes.
And what, the individual caregivers or instructors, are they licensed as well in some capacity?
Well, they operate through my license, and I hire those people that I have a nurse here, RN nurse. He's a nurse trainer. He works through me. I have a director here. She works through me. I have an executive director, and he works through me. Everybody works underneath my license, and these guys are very trained, and they know the system quite well.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question that might be for you or might be for Avi, and that
Okay.
has to do with the facilities for a school like this. You told us that the students are not going to be entirely capable of taking care of themselves. That's why they live in group homes. So is there some special build-out that has to be done for a facility like this so that they are protected, educated, and come and go in a way that is educational for them?
No one is going to be unsupervised that is not in a position to be unsupervised. There are people who are able to be unsupervised. Those are some of the people that we have that work. We have independent people that work at Mariano's, that work at Walmart. These people are able to be unsupervised, but those who are not able to be supervised, by all means, it would not make sense.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Do you have anything else to offer?
Excuse me?
Do you have anything else to say or offer?
Unless you all have any more questions for me.
Oh, question? Commissioner Franklin?
Just one question. How big is your staff? I know you mentioned the people here tonight, but
Well, these are the staff that we have right now, because we have not started, and we are licensed for 48 to 60 people, and this is what we have right now. I am qualified, my director is qualified, my executive director is qualified, the nurse is qualified. Everybody is qualified at this point.
so for 40 to 60 individuals, how much staff will you require?
Well, 1 to 10 is the ratio.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the, yes, Avi, please come up, Avi.
Yes.
I just wanted to address some of the questions and maybe help clarify with regards to whether there already is a facility that exists. So this was briefly mentioned in the actual application, but I would like to reiterate it. A few years ago, Keshet Gadol program. Keshet is a organization been around far longer than I've been alive, and they do virtually the exact same use. They are a specialty school working with individuals of special needs. They did go through the special use permit virtually identically to what we're doing today. They were approved, and they have been operating on site very successfully for a bunch of years. They have the same pickup drop-off scenario. They operate in actually almost the similar part of the building, just on the first floor, not the second floor. And we've had nothing but great success. It's actually really endearing to see a lot of their, I don't know if they're students, clients, patients, but a lot of the folks there, whenever they do come through unassisted, or assisted, it just brings a smile to everyone's face. It really does. So we've had nothing but great success having them there. Additionally, there is the Douglas Center. which is located on the corner of Howard and St. Louis. It's a massive facility. I don't know a lot about the ins and outs, except that they
I know
are.
very well.
Okay, so they are similar use. They're working with kids with special needs. They are a far larger facility, also located in a manufacturing district. As a matter of fact, they are right across the street from our building on the corner of Howard and St. Louis. So they've been in the area for a while as well. The students, from what I understand, and Kamiko can correct me if I'm wrong, they cannot legally drive. So it's not a matter of them opting into a busing system. It's not negotiable. The only way they can get there is to be picked up or dropped off by the bus. So we don't anticipate parking to become an issue in that regard. Lastly, with regards to the special state build-out, maybe Kamiko can speak more to this, but my general understanding in discussions with Kamiko is the this is funded by the state, and the various state bodies, starting with the state fire marshal, but you know, all the different bodies have actually already been on site to inspect it with regards to handicap access, safety, and general provisions, and they have given their preliminary approval for the location within the building, specifically the fact that it's on the second floor, and general kind of interior finishes. They have given their approval for that location. And lastly, I just want to wrap up that there is not going to be any medical use on site. There's not going to be any actual nursing, or medical therapy going on. This is simply giving the kids kind of the day-to-day life skills they need to thrive.
Right.
Are there any questions, I guess, for me at this
Any
point?
other questions? Commissioner?
Related to the age, so these are adults, correct? They're 18 and older.
Adults, 18 and older, yes, 18 to 99. And going back to what Avi was saying was that the least that will be taken care of by someone is maybe a scratch. If a scratch, you get a Band-Aid. But if something happens to someone, we are required by the nurse to send them to the hospital. No medical is taken care of on site at all. No medical. We don't give medication. No medication. It is not a medical facility, not at all.
Does the facilities exist in the offices for preparing meals, or how does that work? How long is the average time they're with you, and are meals involved?
Well, we actually gonna we're gonna have a program there, in which we're gonna be showing individuals how to be self-sufficient and prepare their own meals.
So plumbing is in that suite?
Yes, we have a.
Yeah, if I may jump in here. So there already exists a kitchen on site. The exact final finishes are still subject to, obviously, the village approval for the special use and then the actual construction permits, which we'll be applying for, along with the certificate of occupancy, to modify the space to their specific use. My understanding is there is not going to be a commercial kitchen where there will actually be cooking food, no hood, no commercial oven, none of that. At most, it will be simply to warm up food or prepare it maybe in a microwave or something like that, make sandwiches, things of that nature. There already exists a kitchen on site with basic, plumbing, sink, countertops, and things of that nature.
That was going to be a follow-up question of mine. Where does the food come from in the middle of the day? Is that brought in by DHS?
No, the food is brought in from the family. The DHS does not pay for food. Only thing that DHS requires that we may do is if we give a barbecue, or if we give an outing or something like that, or if we take them on a field trip. But DHS does not provide food.
When you said it's brought in by the family, the people are not living with families necessarily. They're living in community living arrangements, aren't they?
And the same thing, I own several for 12 years, and we send our individuals to lunch with lunch every single day.
Okay. Is this open to people who aren't living in community living facilities but want this type of day activity, day learning?
I'm sorry, it's not. You have to apply. It's called a PONS list, and you have to apply for the PONS list, and it's done through the Department of Human Services.
Okay.
They have a place called CSO. Anybody that wants to apply that qualifies, then they can do it too.
And is your school going to be for-profit or not-for-profit?
It is for-profit.
Is Keshet for-profit or not-for-profit?
Excuse me?
The place that Avi described as being almost identical on a different floor.
I believe they're a non-for-profit, although I'm not certain, but I believe they're non-for-profit. Generally, they cater to two very different communities. Keshet, almost exclusively, to my knowledge, caters to the Jewish community with a heavy focus on the Orthodox Jewish community. As an Orthodox Jew myself all my life, we have a lot of dietary restrictions when it comes to kosher food. We have a lot of other restrictions that come along with that, which makes their program pretty much exclusively geared towards the Jewish community. I don't anticipate any sort of overlap or competition or anything among the two businesses, as they're serving completely two separate communities.
Is the facility on Howard that you described that is similar to this, is that a for-profit or not-for-profit
I don't
facility?
know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'll ask the staff.
The
Douglas,
Douglas
yeah.
Center, the Douglas Center is not for profit.
And explain why the students that you intend to come to your new for-profit school need your school. I understand why they don't want to go to the Keshet school. That seems like a different community, but why they couldn't go to the Douglas Center.
Because my program would be much better than the Douglas Center.
Okay, well, that's good. That's a good explanation. That's right. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right, if you don't have anything else to present, I'll ask the staff to give us the report.
Excuse me?
Please.
Oh, you? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'll keep it short.
Okay.
Few housekeeping items. Let me, Mr. Chairman, what am I trying to do? I need to submit the report, my staff report, into the record.
So granted.
Thank you. I also need to submit an email. There were a couple of emails that went around, originate from Mr. Berman, which I replied to in consideration of Open Meetings Act. It was, I think the entire commission was included on the email. I answered several questions, which I can get into further. I'd also like to submit the floor plan, and I think that was the kind of the origination of that email, because I didn't include it with the report as an attachment, and I should have. Mr. Chairman, if you would accept those into the record as well.
Yes, and make sure that it's in the record or in the report for the board too.
Okay, thank you. And then also a minor change to the conditions. It'll be condition number 2. I didn't include the date. Well, first of all, I'd like to replace, it includes site plan, landscape plan. Those items aren't relevant. I'd like to only include the floor plan dated February 11th, 2020. And when you make your recommendation, I'll ask that that be changed, that condition number 2, to reflect that. Overall, staff recommends approval of this request. It's essentially a tenant finish. It is a special use. It's 3,000 square feet in a 92,000 square foot, office building. It is on the second floor, number 228. So as you can see on the floor plan, it is about, this is where the stairs are, the elevator. The main entrance is right here on the first floor. They would go down this corridor in. Is that correct? It is a little different, isn't it?
So there's actually.
That would be my question.
Right.
Yeah, let me grab
Where does
this
the
real
bus
quick.
drop off the students? Where do they access the space? Where is
Yeah.
this-
So this is not really a site plan, but I'll do my best. McCormick is going north-south along the right-hand side. They would pull in through here. The building has it's a two-story building, but there are two sections of the second story that are actually not connected on the interior. This section of the second story is not accessible to or from this section of the second story. The buses will pull in from McCormick Drive along the parking lot. There's an entrance way right over here. I want to say, although it's not a site plan, so it's hard to say exactly, but on the first floor, there's an entranceway approximately here. They would go to the left to the stairs or elevator, take it to the second floor, come out of the hallway, and enter the space over here, and this is the space over here. So all the drop-off will be happening here, and then they will access it through McCormick. If need be, they can also access it through the fire lane with no parking along it, as noted, this way out onto Cleveland Street, which runs along this side of the building, which will then connect them back to McCormick as well.
Thank you. Okay. I toured the building with the applicant, and yeah, I guess I got a little turned around. So anyway, moving on from that, that is the space on the second floor. Yeah, thank you. Yep. So there are a few items that which are included as the in the recommendations that are ongoing violations that we need to resolve before we move forward with this. One is there are banners on the building on the frontage, and please know that this isn't uncommon. This is just a matter, we have the opportunity to include this with the special use permit rather than going through a violation process. So the applicant's aware of the issues and is willing to comply with it. There's no issue beyond just kind of memorializing it within the conditions. So there are banners on the front of the building, which we only allow for some temporary, time, 30 days. There are, which Avi mentioned, yeah, there's there's a few parking spaces through here, which the fire department has asked they be removed because they would have trouble getting through that area. And then there's a few signs that dedicate parking to a specific tenant. They don't meet the requirements to allow for that to happen. So asking that those be approved as part of the conditions. There are a few relief items that we are requesting be included. And these items are not necessarily germane to the special use permit. As proposed, the building and the tenant would be fully parked if this moves forward. Exactly 215 spaces are provided, and they need exactly 215 spaces. We are asking for relief for future tenants, though, because there's still some vacant space within the building, and our concern is that they're not going to be able to occupy that space because they don't have the parking provided to address it. And so you heard, as far as the applicant, what the use is. Most of the clientele, well, all of the clientele is essentially brought to the site by other means, so the parking isn't necessarily required for them. They do, according to their application, they have 3 staff members, so asking for parking relief to reduce the required parking from 13.4 down to 3 spaces to accommodate that. The second one is to allow for the building's amenities. Avi showed you the conference room in the basement. There's other amenities that currently cannot be used, or they're currently counted in the parking requirements, and we're asking that those be backed out, and then that same square footage could be used for the vacant space. I don't know if I'm saying that exactly right, but essentially, you have a cafe, a gym, conference room, the building engineer's room. That is all considered square footage right now, and each of those rooms require a certain amount of parking to service them. And what I'm asking for is that square footage be backed out. We do have to prove out that these are truly building amenities, so they can't be open to the public. They can only be there for the users of the building. And there is a point to not allowing for that in some commercial districts where you have, restaurants, where you have different businesses nearby. You want to be sure that, all-inclusive office building isn't providing all that for their tenants so that they go out into, the commercial areas and use those. Here, this is more kind of absent of that, so those amenities need to be, or are being offered on site. So that's a point of relief. The last one is essentially that we have a prohibition on the collective use of spaces or counting of spaces for different users, the same spaces. And we encourage the applicant, the building owner, to seek tenants that will use the building at night or on the weekend during those off-peak hours for the parking. And essentially, we don't allow for that as far as our parking requirements go. We don't allow for those spaces to be counted twice. If he has users that are only using the space on nights and weekends, unlike the other tenants, which are all weekday users, you could have the potential to count some spaces twice. So with all three of these relief items, we could probably get him there as far as occupying the full structure to fill his vacancies. Overall, you saw the changes that he had for the building. Typically, buildings are built with full parking requirements being met, or some kind of standard, usually 3 spaces per 1,000 or something like that. This was an old industrial building, and so, square footage per parking doesn't really go together like that when you convert the space from kind of industrial use to more of an office use. You can see the parking shortfall. So that's what we're trying to do here tonight. We're trying to address all of these items.
Yes.
Has there ever been a time that the building's been fully occupied while it's been in the petitioner's ownership?
I don't,
Yeah, if I may. Yes, until about a year and a half ago, when IDT, who I mentioned earlier, when they were bought out by Danaher, they had subsequently vacated the front of the building, which kind of pushed us to put up those banners, which we will be taking down. Until they had left, the building was virtually occupied, well over 95%, which is the suburban office space kind of market vacancy, I'd say, is probably 8%, 10%, so we were well above the average. The space where we are petitioning for a special use permit has been vacant for a number of years, so I cannot say it has been 100% occupied, but in the high 90% occupied for many, many years with no issue. If I may also briefly, I don't believe this was included in the parking analysis, but I think it's worth pointing out that all along Cleveland Avenue, there's additional street parking available. Recently, the village, as far as I understand, has actually changed it where there's no longer truck parking allowed along Cleveland Avenue, which will open up a significant number of spots. Beyond that, there is a portion of Cleveland Avenue which currently has no parking at all, and we will be working with the village to relieve that. I believe it was part of an old use. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, so we will be working with the village to open up that no parking zone where parking is allowed. Based on our preliminary discussions with the village, that seems reasonable. We expect that to go forward, but obviously we will work with the village for that. But as it stands today, there already is a significant amount of parking along Cleveland Avenue as well.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Franklin?
Hi, just a quick couple questions. One, so Good to Great Individuals is only open Monday through Friday? Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And then my second question, comment, you had asked for relief to allow for only 3 parking spaces.
Yes.
We were talking about 40 to 60 individuals at 1 staff person per 10, which is going to be 4 to 6. And I realize they're not there now.
That was new. I understood it differently. And I think in the application it said 3, but it's a 3,000 square foot space, so there's occupancy limits. If they move into, expand essentially into an adjoining suite, which would allow them to have more students, and then they could have more staff. But we could tie it to the number of staff members on site or something like that, as opposed to that number.
My question goes along with that, and goes along with the idea that I would ask a daycare center. Has the license already been given? And if there's a license, should we see that so we can understand better what the state saw in terms of use, occupancy, square footage, quantity, enter, exit, staff? Is that license?
Well, okay.
That's one big question.
A lot of those are building requirements which we'll enforce administratively. However, the request on the relief, which is going from, that's not based upon the number of students, that's not based upon the number of staff. As far as the parking calculation, it's 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet, which is required, or, I'm sorry, 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet, which is what would be required.
My question is different.
Well,
let
me finish my thought, though.
Okay.
So rather than saying specifically that we reduce that parking requirement down to 3 based upon the staff members, we tie it directly to the number of staff members that are present, and then we prove that out as part of the occupancy permit. I'm sorry to.
No, that's okay. So that's good. So do we have a license that DHS has given for this use at this site? Because that will answer all the questions that we've asked for on daycare centers, where they tell us the DHS license. It's not DHS. It's a different
not my
license.
possession. It wasn't part of the application.
Well, I don't think, I think I'm going to move to table tonight, because I think until we see the license, which describes to us this use in a little more specific fashion, with its growth potential from so many students to so many students, with its staffing potential, with the entrances and exits, I think we have every time reviewed a daycare center, and we've reviewed.
I don't understand the comment on the entrances and exits.
So let me speak for a moment. In the past, we've reviewed here, I've reviewed at least a dozen different daycare centers throughout the village.
Okay.
And each time a daycare center comes to us, they describe the physical facility that they are going into. This is for young children.
Right.
They describe the bollards placed in front because of traffic. They describe the entrances and exits for fire. They describe the staffing, the number of students per room in a daycare center, not just the 3,000 feet, but how many rooms are in the daycare center and how the students are going to flow through the daycare center. And that all comes to us usually in a one-page license from the state that tells us this thing is licensed for that facility. And we then say, fine, if the state has looked at all of that, fire, staffing, square footage, we then are ready to approve. And that's what I'm looking for now.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that.
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, the first thing that I want to tell you is that the state will not approve anything unless you all approve it first. So once you say that it's okay, then I will take it to the state. The fire marshal has already approved it, and they have sent it to the state, but the state won't do anything until you all say it's okay. And also, daycare center is so much more different than
that was my only point of comparison. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was the only thing I could reflect on.
It's so different.
Okay. But you're saying that we have to approve first and then tell the state we are willing to accept this facility if then the state licenses it in this geography.
I'm sure that it wouldn't be a problem with the state. I've been with them for 12 years. I'm sure I can get I'll be able to get the approval probably in the next few weeks if you give me just a minute.
But our approval that is subject, our approval is subject to a state license. Is that correct, Matt?
Okay.
Is that a given, or is that something that we will then? No, but we can approve.
I don't know what you're asking me, but I think if you're saying that, do we have to approve before the state will issue a license? That is not uncommon for many of the state licenses that are issued. I haven't run into this particular circumstance, but I would say most of the state licenses first require the zoning approval.
So then my second question that follows up on that is that when we approve, if the state does not, can this facility open?
No, they can't
have a
operate
license.
without license.
I want Matt to simply say that we in the village will not allow a facility that we approve to open unless it has a state license. Is that right, Matt?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's a built-in condition that underlies our approval.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Moving along. Are there any other questions? Okay. Matt?
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay.
As I said, staff recommends approval. The new item that we heard tonight was about the number of students, which may change the number of staff members that will be on site. If you want to change that condition to tie it to the number of staff members as opposed to, the reduction to the 3 staff members, then please do so.
All right. At this point in time, is there anyone in the audience who want to come up and ask a question or give a comment? If not,
Yeah.
are you, well, I'll ask you to come up to give us a final presentation, but I guess there's no one in the audience, so Avi, come on up.
I just want to clarify maybe one or 2 points. What I guess the purpose of this special use application is simply for the general use as a school, and this will also address some of the parking
In that
concerns.
zone.
Correct. Now, the nuance and specifics of the size, layout, and use within the space is still going to be fully subject to, on the village level, the actual building permits and certificate of occupancy, all of which will be done afterwards, and obviously working in hand and with approval of the village.
I think they'll work in parallel.
Yeah. So that's the plan. And then with regards to the size and number of students, initially in the beginning, per my conversation with Kamiko, the plan was to have 3 employees on site, and that's where the application listed the 3. Obviously, there's a possibility for future expansion, whereas Kamiko may have plans up to 40, 60. Obviously, if there are, whether it's state or village limitations.
The special use would need to be modified.
Yeah, I guess that, yeah. We would work with,
Yes,
obviously with
exactly.
you guys to make sure we're in compliant all along. But this is kind of the initial.
We could modify the special use through a modified special use program.
Okay.
Okay.
That works. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, on 2020-07P, I need a motion. 07P, yes. As presented by staff? Yes. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
As modified. Like I said, presented by staff with modifications. Second, thank you, Jeff. Okay. Pen's not working here. Call for a vote. Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman?
Before I vote, let me say that this proposal is not as fully formed as I would like it to have been. It is not as fully formed as any daycare center that has been brought before us has been, and I would like future proposals like this that involve health and safety of disabled or juveniles, disabled individuals or juveniles, to be as fully formed as those past daycare center petitions. With that as a caveat, I will vote aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Villegas?
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin?
Aye.
Commissioner Luxpati?
Aye.
Commissioner Jeff Berman? Aye. Commissioner Matei? Aye. And I'll vote aye. Okay. Is there any other business before the board? Not seeing any. This meeting's adjourned. Good luck with your project.